The first one is you're not loved. The person is not capable of loving you. Maybe they're capable of loving someone else. They're not capable of loving you. So you can't stick around. Number two, there are mental or physical health issues, and you're not willing to become part of the solution. You know, as a coach, I am the solution for many, many people when they have a family member, a husband, a wife, a child, etc., who has one of these crises. But without me, they wouldn't know how to do it, or perhaps they wouldn't want to, so they would move on. The third is if there's an arrest, if there's addiction, if there are deaths, and again, you don't want to stay around to become part of the solution. Nobody's forcing you to. And then finally, there's a lack of cooperation about either having or not having children. Because, you know, the purpose of a great, loving relationship is physical intimacy. You can get every one of your needs met elsewhere. And you're not going to be in a great relationship with somebody if there isn't, at least in the beginning, spectacular physical intimacy, because this is the person you're picking. Most people want to be monogamous. So you wouldn't even ask, is it hopeless, is it hopeful? But the issue of children, now that's a serious point. So I remember a guy actually was asking me out, this many years ago, 30 years ago, and I said, I thought you were married. I said to him, he's one of these gorgeous models, and I was designing menswear, and he was our model. And I said, what's going on? I thought you live in Connecticut and you have a wife and a child. He said, I do. My wife is insisting on having another child. I'm divorcing her. What? He said, I am not signing on for this again. So I said to him, well, now, this is 30 years ago, long before I was a coach. I said, well, let's back up a little bit. Let's, talk about how you would motivate your wife to understand how much she loves you and you love her and you want to stay together. And the process of having another child and the expense is just too much for you. So they patched it up.
Good advice, even ahead of your time, right?
Way ahead. They patched it up.
Now, can you describe for us what makes a partner so hopeless that you must force yourself to fall out of love?
Well, a lot of my clients who are women want to get married to a man who doesn't want to remarry, or sometimes my clients are men who want to remarry a woman who does not want to remarry. So disagreements about marriage is a big one. Of course, if your lover is already married, then that may make it look hopeless, but not always. Depends on what stage in life you're in and how you feel about that. If your partner refuses to get a divorce and you thought over a period of years that this would have happened already, again, not for everyone is this going to be hopeless, but for a lot of people it will be. And then finally, if your partner refuses to marry you after getting this divorce, et cetera, et cetera. So all these issues they all boil down to commitment. So if you want to fall in love with someone and you want to be in love with someone and that person feels the same about you, at some point there's a commitment that you reach. But I have to tell you, and Gigi certainly knows this, I've worked with a lot of clients who are having the most miraculous lives together and nobody got a divorce. Or if one person finally got a divorce, nobody's remarried, and they're having a miraculous life together. Because what's really important to most people who have awakened hearts is the awakened heart, the love. And that's really what this show is about. How do you feel the love even if you have to move on?
My heart is smiling at this. Thank you, Susan. For many people, I know that at the end of a love affair, the feeling like going cold turkey from an addiction, let's say to heroin. Can you speak about the effect of the switch cost in moving on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, you have to commit yourself to going through that. I was just talking to a former client who broke up with his girlfriend for the 4th time. These are people who don't understand the switch cost concept, right? Because they're apart and it's lonely. They're apart, and if sex was being used to improve their brain chemistry, they're sad, or they're anxious, or they're angry, or all of the above. And then one of them reaches out to the other, but they haven't resolved the underlying problem. And I can't tell you what it is, but each couple has an underlying problem or two. And so they don't have the skills yet to really address this and transform this, or perhaps neither of them wish to. And so they're going to keep doing this. They're going to come together and they're going to bounce apart, and they're going to come together and they're going to bounce apart because the underlying skills are missing. It's not about the issue. It's about the skills. Because I am here tonight as the walking demonstration of the skills we're talking about. You can be deeply in love. You can find out that this must end. And within hours or a few days, you can have turned the whole thing around to acceptance and gratitude. And that's what every one of us must do. Not, as I said to one of my clients yesterday, you use all the right words for gratitude. I'm not hearing the sentiment. Are you feeling it? Because I'm not hearing it. And he was like, yeah, you caught me. You got me. Okay, so that just means that he hasn't done enough self-empathy. That just means he's not using the 4 questions of inquiry enough. He's still in this miserable story, But once you get out of that, you have freedom.
And boy, that in itself is quite a gift. Now, I know, Susan, that you say that real love lasts forever. Please explain that.
This is the fastest that I've ever been able to disconnect from any aspect of pain, which is really thrilling. And I've been able to move into gratitude so much faster. And this is because the man that I was involved with is really a genius at that. So I learned that from him and speeded up the process. However, the love you feel, if you ever felt it, is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. So the exercise that I recommend, now you heard me talk about falling in love and then falling out of love. So falling in love is you connect to the loved one, you think about him or her, you talk about him or her, you send out your love vibe, you hope you're going to receive love vibes. That's very different. This is where you just sit with this experience of love. Pick 30 seconds when you felt this love. Of all the times you were together, of all the times you thought about him or her, all the times you spoke to him or her, pick 30 seconds. This is the virtual reality exercise. Pick 30 seconds and be in deep, deep presence with love. Not so much love for him or love for her and the personality, because that's not love. You're not in love with somebody because she's beautiful or he's handsome. You're not in love with somebody because of the money or power or position they do or don't have. That's not love. That's just, trophy wife stuff. Real love is a vibrational state. Sit quietly and be in the presence of that love. It's a meditation. And in that meditative state, know that there is nobody coming or going. It's right here, right now. You can have this on your deathbed. You can have this long after your beloved has died. You can have this whenever you want it, with this person or the last person or the next person, because that's love.
Oh, Susan, that is very deep, and I hope that's helpful for everybody. It certainly is for me. Now, when you demonstrate self-soothing for us, when someone needs help themselves, let's say they fall out of love, and I know you've really yourself have had that experience.
Yes, indeed. And how brave of me to do it on live TV. Okay. So just imagine you feel shocked because your need for connection is not going to be met. And take a deep yogic breath. And you feel distraught because your need for unconditional love isn't being met. And take a deep yogic breath. And you may feel devastated that your need for compassion isn't being met. And breathe. And I hope you get up to a little anger, because anger is more powerful than grief. So you feel frustrated because your need for consideration isn't met. And breathe. And you feel annoyed because your need for mutuality hasn't been met. Breathe. And now, it depends on, what the scenario is. For a client I'm working with, it was that his need for information wasn't met for almost a year while his partner decided whatever the decision was going to be. Or for another client whose wife keeps threatening things, he's, terrified because his need for connection with his children on a daily basis may not be met if we don't turn this boat around. So your needs will be different, but the process is called self-empathy. Please send me an email if you'd like me to help you with this.
I'm so grateful that you developed self-empathy. Number one, it's worth the call right there. Now, how do we get over the emotional pain and the suffering if you both really love one another, but there is a tragic situation that keeps you apart?
This is self-worth and self-respect. My mother is a genius about this. She taught me a lot of stuff. This one she didn't teach me. I had to spend $1 million on workshops around the world so I could learn this. But eventually, if you study with enough people who, really have skills, and you do enough homework and you show up enough for these, trainings, you get it. So it's about self-respect. There is no way, my mother used to say, that unrequited love was worth a minute of her time. The world is a big place. There are tons of people on it, and there's nothing that you should be wasting your time on. Well, my mother never had a depressed minute in her life. Not a second. I unfortunately got a little of my father's stuff. But it comes down to that. It comes down to brain chemistry, brain wiring, and self-respect. And so if that person says that she's not the person for you, after a while of motivating her and motivating her and motivating her, you just say, you know what, I get it. It's like too much work. I could make a turkey that's going to take me all day, but I'm not going to make a turkey that's going to take me 4 days or a week and a half, right? There's a certain point.
Okay, let's explore this. What advice do you give everyone to learn self-empathy to your lover, to offer it to him in falling out of love?
My favorite story, which you guys have heard, was in the 80s with my German boyfriend who panicked about business. And on the very day that I had lost my only client, because it was such a big client, I really didn't have time for more than one, he decides to break up with me. Pops out of bed, starts to walk to my bedroom closet 11 feet away. And obviously, this is not a convenient time for me. This is the last thing I need, is to put my attention on that. So he never gets to the closet because I give him so much empathy, and I give him so much space, and I give him so much peace, that he says, oh, well, hey, maybe you're right. And yeah, and he, comes back, and then we're together for as long as I want to be together with him, which was, like another 3 or 4 months until we could sit and talk and see what we wanted that was different. And there was a lot that was different.
Okay, so remember this song, Please Release Me, Let Me Go, You Don't Love Me Anymore? I remember that one well. It's still in there. Well, I know, Susan, that releasing someone is a huge energetic principle. Please explain that to us.
It's very tricky, though. Do not do it because you're angry. Do not do it because you're scared. The most difficult part of all this, for me, even now, is staying present to the vulnerability. I know how to get rid of people in my life, believe me. I've been doing this for a long time. Don't do it. The exercise is called cutting the cord. I'm delighted to send it to you, but don't do it right away. First of all, if the person's life circumstance and your life circumstance are a match, and you just don't know how to communicate with each other, call me, let's work on that part of it, not on ending the relationship, because if it's a communication issue, you're going to have it with the next person. So be careful about that. If you love this person and you want this person to be happy and well, and you know that you provide a really wonderful gift, then you don't want to do cutting the cord. See if it's possible to transform into a friendship, even if the person doesn't get that it could be. Because, people have limited perceptions. But if you know me, then you know that I'm friendly with anybody that I've ever been close to if they were decent. If they weren't decent, cut the cord. If they were abusive, cut the cord. If they were violent, cut the cord. But otherwise, really wait and see. And you get a feel for it after about 40 years. And you start to learn when you want to cut the cord and when you don't, but never do it right away. Always wait about 30 days at least.
That's beautiful advice. Now, if you have a partner, let's say, that has a mental or a physical illness or an arrest or an addiction, and you don't want to stay and help with the solution, how do you break away?
Well, you have to have really strong empathy skills. You have to. And you have to be so established in self-respect to know. And you also have to know something that I learned very late in life, and I don't know anyone really who knows this when I tell them, but even if you're a professional in any of the fields that these troubled people would need, simply by being in an intimate relationship with that person, you can't help. I mean, yes, I can teach somebody self-empathy, I can teach somebody empathy, I can teach somebody this, that, or the other, skill, as I've taught my dear, dear friend Gigi and all my friends. But if I'm sexually intimate with somebody, if we're lovers, and he has a problem in his life, I can't be an indifferent life coach. Of course not. I have a preference. So you have to be very clear, even if you are a family attorney, don't be the family attorney for your girlfriend's divorce. Even if you are an addiction specialist, don't be the addiction specialist for your boyfriend's sobriety. Avoid, avoid, avoid.
Okay, now let's talk about one of the biggest or smallest reasons that you really may need to talk of love, sex. Oh.
Yeah, I can't say it often enough. That's where a lifelong relationship starts. It's not everything, but that's where it starts. Because where are you going to go in a monogamous relationship? If you can't dance your wife around the kitchen and dance her into the bedroom and dance her into bed and dance her clothes off and dance her into lovemaking and have it be the ecstatic experience each of you have always longed for, and have it be ecstatic and exquisite year after year, because underneath that is this deep, abiding love. And all around this is the etheric love, the astral, spiritual love, as well as the physically intimate love. That's where you have to start. And if you're not there, you are on the verge of disaster. You're walking a tightrope. I know this because I get these calls all the time, every week. So be very, very careful. You've got to be able to bring that back. So if you're the man, you've heard me describe it, and if you're the woman, you can still start dancing with your partner in the kitchen and move him into bed, you know? It's usually easier. So if you're the woman and you understand what I'm talking about, it's usually easier to motivate a man to have sex, but not necessarily after a certain age. You have to look sexy. You have to be thin. You have to have enough self-respect to do your makeup, do your hair. Not as beautifully as Gigi, fair enough, who can? But you have to look good. You know, you have to look good. So that's just the way it is.
Oh gosh, I'm getting all excited. Keep the romance alive.
No, sex. Not just romance.
Okay. Okay, the big one.
Yes.
Is the issue of sex.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, which that includes monogamy. And so if your partner has different sexual needs, then what?
You have to be smart enough to discuss this stuff at the very beginning. You know. And it's hard to. It's just the things you have to discuss at the beginning have to do with safe sex. They have to do with sexually transmitted diseases. They have to do with preference for more children if you're, you know, in childbearing age. They have to do with all the uncomfortable conversations that people do not want to have. How many people do you want in your bed at the same time? What kind of positions do you enjoy in bed? You have to be able to talk about all that stuff, you know. And still the relationship can, you know, end. But the most important thing is you've got to get this resolved because there's no place to go. You know, I was in a relationship with a guy for 10 days. And on the 10th day, I ended the relationship over this issue that he was hemming and hawing about and didn't want to talk about. And then I kept at it very sweetly, very calmly. Let's talk, let's find out, da, da, da. And finally, you know, on day 10, I said, well, you know, you're a great guy. You're just not my great guy. You know, you're a wonderful guy, but not for me. It's not, I don't want to do any of that.
Not the right fit.
Yeah, well, there was a different problem, but yeah.
Okay.
Sexual preference, number of partners fit.
Oh boy, she's making me blush throughout this show, I admit it. I know that so many people that hide their debts from a partner, including the IRS debt. Can you explain how we can handle this and also fall out of love if we really don't want to take this on?
Well, you know, I've had clients who went the other way where the woman or the man had huge debts, but they really loved him or her, and they married, and it's great, and they're still married, and it's wonderful, because money wasn't an issue. The one partner had it, one partner didn't, great. I've also had clients who discovered that he or she had financial problems, and my client, who was calling me to figure out what to do, was offended, upset, angry, sad, scared, you name it, because financial responsibility and fiscal stability was very important to him or her. So therefore, you have to know yourself. But, you know, as you hear us say on the show all the time, generosity is an aspect of love. If somebody loves you, they're generous with you. They're generous with time, they're generous sexually, they're generous and they share. If you're in love with somebody who doesn't share, who isn't generous with you, then, you know, that's not love. Because how could you possibly spend the rest of your life with somebody like that? I remember somebody's father taking me aside and saying, you know, he was getting rid of his old Ferrari and I wanted to buy it, and he wanted to get top dollar from somebody else. And let's face it, he could have given me the Ferrari without me paying anything for it, and he wouldn't. I just think you ought to know that. Ooh.
So basically, if you really love somebody, you really do want to contribute to their well-being.
Absolutely. In every way that you can. It's just natural.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take note, guys. No.
And women
Of
too,
course,
right?
it goes
Everybody,
both ways.
Yeah, but I mean, that's such a great way of saying, if somebody's selfish and bad, well, that's a great way of saying, okay, there's no mutuality here. This person isn't here for me. He's only here for himself or herself. Or if somebody isn't generous, and you know, Christmas is coming. So if somebody isn't generous, and right after Christmas, you've got Valentine's Day. So you need to be practical. Is this somebody you want to spend the rest of your life with? Is this somebody who understands showing love in a three-dimensional way?
Absolutely.
That's really all it is.
Every day, the minute your feet hit the floor, the dance is on.
Yes. Even when you're not on the floor, even when you're still, yes, you're still in your nightgown or not.
Okay, let's explore this. What if there is a core issue about having some children or perhaps not having children? I know this is one of the biggest reasons that people do marry. And how can someone get over this if this, in fact, is the one key reason that they are, in fact, looking for a marriage?
You have to get over it, you know? You just have to get off it. Or not. You have to really decide what's important. I mean, I've looked at the things that are important to me, and I've re-examined, you know, just very recently, I've re-examined the things that are very, very important to me. And it's a small list, and those things that are very, very important to me are, you know, key, they're essential. You know, and I laugh when I work with somebody on his or her perfect life partner list, how many people forget monogamy? How many people forget she is mentally healthy? She is physically healthy. Everyone, every single person that I've worked with, ever since I came up with the idea for this list and how the list works and how to use it, nobody ever said to me the first thing is monogamy, even if I knew that that's why their last relationship ended.
Yes.
And even if I knew that they were, you know, involved with someone who was bipolar or suffering from chronic depression, mentally healthy, physically healthy was not anything they suggested to me. They were, he's 6 feet tall and he's got $3 million, and that's great. But when somebody's lying down, it really doesn't matter how tall he is. And if you have a decent place to live and you can afford it, then, you know, past a certain point, it doesn't matter how many zeros there are. You're not enjoying that morning, noon, and night. So be more practical, please.
And realistic, of course. Now, I know that many couples can't stay together because of lifestyle differences, let's say food choices, sleep cycles, spirituality or not. And so how do we go about loving someone when you can't compromise?
Well, one of you has to. You know, about everything. It doesn't mean you have to compromise about everything. But one of you has to compromise. Now, I don't know how women go along with the CPAP machines for sleeping for their husbands and partners so that the husbands and partners aren't going to die in the middle of the night. I really don't know. I'm a very light sleeper, and I've seen a lot of women on the verge of killing their husbands, hating their husbands so much because they haven't had a decent night's sleep, to which I say, well, you better figure out how to live somewhere with an extra bedroom. So when you can't stand it anymore, you, the wife, get up and sleep somewhere else and then come back to bed in the morning. Oh, I never thought about that. So you have to be able to get a good night's sleep if you're a light sleeper. You have to be able to have peace and calm if that's what you need. You can't have somebody who's constantly keeping you on edge. You can't have someone who you feel like his slave or her slave. But I mean realistically, I'm not just because you've got a weird attitude about it. You know, you have to be careful. So this is a planet with 8 billion people. You only need one if you're looking for monogamy. And you have to blow through them like Kleenex, which is what I'm doing online. Blowing through, you know, this one, no. Well, maybe I should speak to that one. No. Maybe this one I should meet, you know. Oh, no. Next. You have to, because you could meet 3,000 people on some of these dating sites in a very short period of time if you have the energy for it. You can't waste your time.
Yes. So it's either a yes or a no, bottom line.
Yeah.
Well, very practical. Now let's speak about availability. And if you really do love somebody and they refuse to marry you, I know you've been very successful, Susan, in guiding couples to really make a lifetime together in various unusual ways.
You know, my first cousin loved the man who ultimately became her husband after 46 years of refusing to marry her because of his hideous first marriage. And for 46 years, she harassed him about this. And I begged her to stop. I begged her to stop. And finally she stopped. And about 6 months later, he proposed to her and they got married. And the day after they got married at breakfast, he said, "If I knew it was going to be so wonderful, I would have married you years ago." And I said, "And did you hit him over the head with a frying pan?" And I was really tempted. Yeah, but that's, you know, you can't keep doing what doesn't work expecting to get a different result. Let it go. You can either let the man go and marry someone else. You can let the idea of marriage go and just be with your beloved and have him be with you. It's your choice.
Okay, now Susan, I know it sounds like self-soothing is the key, because in addition to getting over the pain in the future, you may have to reconnect. If the person is indeed wonderful, and will you just demonstrate that example for us?
Yeah, when someone calls me and they're devastated, or when I've been feeling devastated myself, you have to notice the stories you tell. You know, one of my clients said last night, "I'll never find anyone else." And I said, "Do you really believe that's true?" "No, I really don't." "Great. Okay. You'll never find anyone as wonderful as she is his next story. Do you really believe that's true?" "Yes." "Okay. Well, then I reminded him, having known him for many years, you know, and having been the coach who helped him find that relationship, I said, "But remember when you said that and then it turned out not to be true?" "Oh, yeah." "Okay." So noticing the stories we tell and refusing to continue to tell these stories is crucial. You have to stop feeling like a victim. You have to choose this outcome. It doesn't matter if you were married for 40 years and your husband or wife wakes up one morning and says, "I'm done." You, the spouse, have to choose that outcome, because that's the first step to your own sanity and your freedom. You're never going to get anywhere by fighting with him or her. You're never going to get anywhere by begging. The only way you're going to get anywhere, if in fact you want to, if in fact there's the possibility, is by being sane, being stable, moving on with your life, finding a replacement if you want a replacement, being alone and being present and being peaceful and being joyous, if that's your preference. And then you have no idea what is coming down the road. You have no idea. I mean, that person may have been wonderful, but they may be somebody very much like him or her that's even more wonderful for you. You never know. And it all comes down to, what is the work you do?